Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Max. If you've ever been blindsided by someone you trusted completely, you'll understand where I'm coming from. I was married to a woman named Joanna. For years, I gave her everything I had, emotionally, financially, and even with my time. And I didn't just say it, I lived it. I'd go to work, come home, and do whatever I could to make her life easier. But what I refused to see was that while I was loving her fully, she was cheating right under my nose with someone I didn't even know existed until everything came crashing down. The betrayal itself was already enough to knock the wind out of me. But what made it worse was what happened after I kicked her out. Her affair partner showed up at my door. And let me tell you, nothing prepares you for the moment when the man your wife was cheating with looks you in the eye and says he wants to talk. What followed was something no one could have anticipated. Before Joanna, there was my first wife, who died in a car accident when she was driving home from work and it was raining. It was one of those heavy rains where you can barely see 2 feet in front of you. A truck skidded and hit her car head-on. That has remained the worst day of my life. I was on a business trip in another city. We'd talked that morning, and that's the last time I heard her voice. Those 7 years of marriage weren't perfect, but they were good. We argued, sure, but I never once felt like she wasn't in it with me. The days after her death were a blur. I didn't know grief could feel physical until then. It's like someone had cut a hole in my chest and left it wide open. For 3 years, I lived in that space. Around the time I turned 38, one of my cousins gently asked if I had ever thought about moving on and loving again. At first, I was angry, but the more I sat with it, the more I realized I wasn't done living. I still had love in me. I wasn't looking to replace my late wife, but I was lonely. I missed talking to someone at the end of the day. I missed the feeling of being connected to someone. So I said to myself, all right, let's just be open to the possibility. After I opened up to exploring love, I met Joanna through a mutual friend. She was beautiful and younger. After months of being surrounded by people who didn't know what to say to a widower, Joanna was a breath of fresh air. She didn't tiptoe around my loss, but she didn't make it the centerpiece either. We started slow. As things got more serious, I found myself comparing her to my late wife. Joanna was different, sure, but she ticked so many of the same boxes. Kind, intelligent, supportive. I was eager to feel that kind of closeness again, to rebuild something that resembled the life I lost. So I gave her space to shape our relationship in the way that felt right to her. Joanna made it clear early on that she wanted to be a full-time housewife. She said it made her feel purposeful. I respected that. I'd already worked hard to put myself in a place where that was financially possible. After my first wife died, I went nuclear on our finances, worked late, took side contracts, stayed up nights just crunching numbers. I wanted to own everything outright. I couldn't control loss, but I could control debt. I paid off the mortgage within 3 years before I ever brought Joanna through the front door as my wife. We didn't have a big wedding. That wasn't what either of us wanted. Just a small, quiet ceremony. A few close friends. I told her the day we signed those papers, you won't ever have to work unless you want to. She smiled and said that was all she needed. In the beginning, things felt good. We started doing things I hadn't done since before my world cracked in half. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt present. Those early days brought me a kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. I let myself believe that maybe life was giving me a second chance. I think every married couple hits that point where things start to feel different. Not necessarily bad. With Joanna and me, it was right around our 2nd anniversary. Before that, we were good. We had our arguments like any normal couple. But there was this sense that we were still choosing each other. But shortly after that anniversary, I started noticing little shifts. She began to use "I'm tired" or "Can we not do this today?" more frequently. It was like she'd disconnected without telling me. One day, I logged on to our home computer to her Amazon account that I use once in a while. I intended to order a drill machine, but when I checked the order section, I saw she had ordered a couple of mail items in the past months, and they clearly weren't for me, because I never got any of the things I saw as a gift or anything. At first, I didn't overthink it. I assumed maybe she was getting gifts for her brother or a cousin. But I still decided I will ask who she got those mail items for. And when I asked her about it, she immediately went cold. She got angry. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Do I look like someone who would cheat on you?" I was speechless. I hadn't even used the word cheat. I didn't say anything close to that. But she did. I remember thinking, where did that come from? I even tried to backpedal and explain myself, but she cut the conversation off right there, like I'd crossed some unforgivable line. That was the first time the word cheating even entered my thoughts. After that conversation, I knew better than to bring it up again. Joanna made it clear she didn't want to talk, and pushing her would only make things worse. So I let it go, or at least I pretended to. But her behavior in the days that followed got me thinking. She stayed withdrawn, barely speaking unless necessary. She started sleeping with her phone under her pillow, something she'd never done before. And any time a notification popped up, she'd lunge for it like it was a ticking time bomb. I know what it feels like when someone's hiding something. Her entire demeanor screamed guarded. Then we started having arguments, petty, unnecessary ones. It was obvious she was trying to create a reason to be angry, like she needed to justify the way she was acting. My gut told me something deeper was going on. And the thing about instincts? They don't go away when you ignore them. They get louder. One afternoon, I came home earlier than usual. Joanna was passed out on the couch, deep asleep, her phone still in her hand with a video playing. Some YouTube cooking thing, I think. The screen hadn't locked yet. It felt like a moment I wasn't supposed to have, but I took it. I sat down quietly, picked up the phone, and started checking. The gallery looked clean. Nothing weird in the photos. But the messages? That's where it got concerning. Every single conversation looked like it had started after the day I asked about the Amazon orders. Even chats with her sister and mom were freshly restarted, like she'd deleted everything and started over. One message, though, stood out. It was from an unknown number. The text said something like, "You always overthink." I didn't say that, which didn't make sense by itself. It was clearly a reply to something that had been deleted. I scrolled up, nothing. Just that reply. That's when I knew for sure. I was looking at the remnants of a conversation she didn't want anyone to see. Then I checked the call logs. That same unknown number had called her way more than I did. Like daily. Sometimes twice a day. And she'd answered almost every time. I didn't recognize the number, but I saved it to my phone before I put hers back down exactly where it was. I didn't confront her that day. I didn't say anything at all. But in that moment, I understood I was living with someone who was keeping a lie from me. And from that point on, I wasn't just watching, I was preparing. I decided to investigate the suspicious number discreetly. I just didn't have the proof to back it up yet. So, I didn't come at Joanna with accusations. I didn't want to be that guy who throws around baseless claims and ends up apologizing for making a mess out of nothing. When I started digging, to my surprise, I found out the number was linked to a neighbor, one I barely ever spoke to. We'd exchanged maybe 2 words in passing since they moved in. I didn't have his number. That discovery alone made my stomach turn. It wasn't hard proof of anything, but it troubled me. Suddenly, I couldn't ignore the signs I'd been brushing off. I thought about confronting her just to see how she'd react. Maybe she'd fumble or she'd lie, and I'd catch it. But I didn't want to be wrong and end up being the bad guy. If she pulled out some innocent explanation, like it was a mix-up or someone else entirely, I'd look like a paranoid fool. So instead, I did something quiet. I swapped out our regular doorbell for one with a built-in camera. I didn't tell her. I just installed it. At the same time, I made another choice. We had been trying for a baby. Once I had a suspicion of infidelity, I stopped being intimate with her. It was partly self-protection, partly strategy. I didn't want to be tied to something permanent if this was heading toward a truth I couldn't ignore. Over the next few weeks, the doorbell camera did its job. It didn't catch anyone coming to the house, but it recorded something else. Joanna leaving during the day. Not just once or twice. Almost daily. She'd head out in the late morning or early afternoon and come back a couple of hours before I got home. When I asked her casually what she did all day, she'd say, "Oh, I was just here, doing chores, catching up on Netflix." She said it like she hadn't been out at all. Meanwhile, I had the footage, time-stamped and clear. But I didn't let on or react. I nodded and pretended I believed her. I kept it up for a month. All the times she went out, I logged the time. But still, I hadn't seen who she was meeting or where she was going. So I took the next step. I hired a private investigator. A week later, he called me. He said he'd followed her, taken photos. He showed me exactly where she was going. Grocery runs, yes. But more than that, she was walking over to my neighbor's house, the one whose number I'd found. Turns out the guy had quit his job months ago and was now running some business from home, and his wife usually left for work around the same time Joanna left home. That gave them the perfect setup. A quiet house with no eyes. The photos were clear. No way to explain it away. That was the moment I stopped wondering and stopped hoping I was wrong. My gut had been trying to tell me something for weeks. And now I had the proof in my hand. I came home that day with a heaviness in my chest that I can't quite describe. I already knew the truth, but I needed to look her in the eye and hear how far she'd go to protect the lie. Joanna was sitting in the living room, scrolling through her phone like usual. I stood there for a moment, watching her, wondering how many times she'd sat there like that after coming back from his place. I didn't raise my voice when I asked her about it. I told her I knew about the man she'd been sneaking off to see. At first, she pretended not to understand. Then she started throwing questions back at me. Are you serious? Where is this coming from? Classic deflection. When that didn't work, the tears started. The shaking voice, the "you are accusing me," the "you're just being paranoid" routine. But I'd seen too much. Heard enough. You can only gaslight someone for so long before the flame goes out. I looked her straight in the eye and told her I wasn't going to stay married to a professional liar and gaslighter. I just walked away because I had already made up my mind. The very next morning, I booked an appointment with a divorce lawyer. While the papers were being prepared, I started to pull away from her completely. I didn't eat her food anymore. Emotional distance had to come with physical distance, or else I'd slip back into pretending this marriage still had something left in it. She probably thought, like the last time, after the Amazon orders thing, that this would blow over, that I'd cool down and we'd go back to how things were. But I was done pretending. When the divorce papers were ready, I signed them that same day and handed them to her directly. She refused to sign. She thought she could stall it, wear me down, or manipulate the situation like she always had. So I took the next step. I asked my lawyer to file a motion to have her removed from the house. It was mine, after all, purchased years before we even met. It took a couple of months, but the court agreed. She had to leave. Of course, she didn't go quietly. Throughout the process, she tried to flip the script, claimed I was controlling, cold, even abusive, throwing everything at the wall to see what would stick. But she had no evidence, because none of it was true. And in court, facts matter more than dramatics. The divorce wasn't even finalized yet when the doorbell rang one random Saturday afternoon. I was sitting on the couch when my phone buzzed with a notification from the front door camera. I tapped the screen, and there he was, the guy Joanna had thrown everything away for, standing on my porch. I didn't even get up. I pressed the intercom button and kept my voice low and steady, and told him to leave my property. He stood there, shifting uncomfortably, probably unsure if I was about to lose it. "Max, I just want to explain," he said. I didn't have the patience for that. I said, "Leave before I make sure you regret stepping foot here." And still, he stood there. That's what got me. The sheer audacity to show up at my house thinking he deserved a conversation. That's when I got up, opened the door, and without a single word, without a second of hesitation, I decked him. The punch landed square on his nose. He hit the ground hard. Blood was already spilling down his face by the time he got back on his feet. He didn't swing back. He just looked at me and said, "I deserve that. I know I did. I'm here to ask for your forgiveness, for Joanna's sake." That last part made me laugh. Forgiveness? For Joanna's sake? I stared at him and said flatly, "You can have her." He hesitated for a second. Then came the confession I didn't expect. "I can't," he said quietly. "I'm married. I never planned for this to go that far. My wife doesn't know. I can't let her find out." I looked him dead in the eyes and said, "Maybe I should tell her then." He blanched. He took a step back, wiped at the blood under his nose, and whispered, "Please don't. I've already ruined enough." I didn't say anything after that. This was who Joanna risked everything for. And now he was begging me not to wreck his home. "Last warning," I said. "Get off my property." He turned and left without another word. Never called the cops. Never tried to get even. I never followed through on my threat to tell his wife. Didn't need to. A few months later, I heard they were getting divorced too. Maybe karma finally did its job. Or maybe his wife found out on her own. The divorce dragged on longer than I thought it would, about 9 months, even though our marriage had barely lasted 5 years and there were no kids involved. I thought the end would bring some sense of relief, but honestly, it just felt empty at first. You don't spend years building a life with someone and walk away without bruises, no matter how badly it ended. During that time, I learned something simple but important. If you don't take care of yourself, nobody else will. So once everything was signed, sealed, and official, I stopped asking questions. Instead, I focused on getting myself back. I started doing small things. And now, when people ask me if I'll ever remarry, I tell them plainly, no. Once you see how fragile trust is, once you feel what it's like to be lied to by the person you trusted most, you start to understand the price of blind hope. And I'm not willing to pay that price again. I didn't see it coming, and I don't think I ever really prepared myself for the kind of hurt that followed. If you've been through something like this, then, it's about picking up the pieces slowly, one by one, when no one's watching. I've chosen to live life on my own terms now. But marriage? That door's closed. I've got nothing against people who still believe in it. It's just not for me anymore. Not after everything. Thank you for listening.